94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
Thank you to the General's Hot Sauce for providing their triple threat 3-pack of sauce to this week's featured soldier. Veteran-owned, South Carolina grown. GeneralsHotSauce.com. Happy holidays, everybody. I'm Ethan James, and today we're going to be talking to U.S. Air Force veteran and veteran of the Vietnam War, Ron Bartlett. Mr. Bartlett, thanks so much for being on the call in with me today. Thanks so much for your service. Tell me a little bit about the reason that you decided as a young man to join the United States Air Force.
When I was in college, as soon as I graduated, I was asked to go for a physical. 2 months later, I was invited by the President of the United States to join the Vietnam War.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, very funny.
I was drafted and then elected to enlist in the Air Force. So I became an intelligence analyst when I was enlisted, and then Colonel I worked for kept encouraging me to go to officer training school, which I did, and then eventually became a navigator and then electronic warfare officer.
You and your wife met at 13 years old, and you've been married for over 50 years. That is just incredible, sir. Absolutely incredible. Tell us about that journey that you and your wife have been through.
Sure. We met through the church youth group and did not really date each other. We had other boyfriends and girlfriends at that time. I wound up seeing her at her prom, and I was a year ahead of them. When I saw her, we just clicked, and we started dating right after that and got engaged a couple years later. What's
some advice you might have for some married couples that haven't been married for that huge stretch of 50 years? You got any advice for them?
The advice I guess I would give them is that just keep loving each other, and each one of you has to give 110% every day into the marriage. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
You joined the Air Force in 1968, and 2 years later, you were off to officer candidate school. Tell me about that. Tell me about those 2 years and what made you decide to go that route, become an officer.
Well, initially, when I got drafted, I had just planned to stay 4 years, which was the commitment in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. And I just had opted to do that because the Vietnam War was on, and I thought, well, I could either go in the Army for 2 years and spend it in the jungle with an M16, or I could push a pencil as an intelligence analyst, and I actually wound up working the Vietnam Air War problems from San Antonio. But when I decided to go to officer training school, my wife was very enthusiastic about it. In fact, she kind of pushed me to go ahead and do it.
Thank you to Resource Financial Services for providing an Orca tumbler for this week's featured soldier. Proud to offer military personnel 0 lender fee mortgages. ResourceVALoans.com. Mr. Bartlett, you made a comment earlier that you wanted to join the Air Force to kind of stay out of the jungles of Vietnam. However, you ended up flying over 100-plus combat missions in Vietnam. Tell me about those combat missions and the experiences that you had in there.
Oh, we were sent in a large number of B-52s in the spring of 1972 over to Guam, which is Anderson Air Force Base.
Right.
And we would then fly 12-hour missions to and from Vietnam from Guam.
Wow.
We would fly those every other day. While I had a total of 88 combat missions from that route, it racked up a lot of combat hours, but we were only actually in peril for about 2 hours out of that 12.
Right. Was there ever a time when you were flying in peril that you thought to yourself, man, how did I end up in this situation?
Well, you didn't have time to think about that. You were well trained. I was in Strategic Air Command because they owned all the B-52s at the time. And so we were so well trained and disciplined that once you got into the fight, instinct takes over and all your training just takes over. And you have to just press everything else to the back of your mind. You can't be thinking about your family or anything else. You just kind of concentrate on the job that you've been trained to do.
You and your family seem to be very, very close, being married to your wife for over 50 years. You moved your family 19 times in 27 years. That's got to create such a beautiful and strong bond in family. Tell me a little bit about that.
Early on, the children, when they were a lot younger, gnashed their teeth every time I got a set of new orders because they had just gotten... we had just gotten there, had been there a year or two, and then got new orders to move again. They had just had all the best friend in the world that I'll ever have I'm going to be leaving behind. But they soon realized that they could make new best friends at the next duty station. And later on in life, my daughter actually told me moving around like that gave them such a perspective, because a lot of their friends only knew what was in their county or their state. They had no idea what was going on nationally or internationally, whereas our children had that exposure.
You have this enormous list of accomplishments throughout your life that are just really, really extraordinary. And on top of it all, you have a master's degree in international relations, a perfect degree for a gentleman like yourself that's been all over the world. Tell me about the road and the difficulties of getting that master's.
Yeah, it was difficult to get a master's while you were in the military service. At the time, I was flying as an instructor, electronic warfare officer on B-52s at Castle Air Force Base in Merced, California. And very often I'd have to fly on the nights where the classes were being offered. So my wife would actually sit in and take notes on the class for me. What was kind of a little bit humorous was I'd come out of a 3-hour class with a page and a half or two of notes. She'd have about 12 pages. So she was really a much better student. I often joke that she actually got that master's, not me.
Funny. And another great example of that beautiful bond that you guys have of over 50 years of marriage.
Absolutely. Our friends would often say that they never saw one of us without the other, because we went everywhere together.
Mr. Bartlett, you're the treasurer of the Red River Valley Association. Tell me a little bit about the organization and what you guys do in the community here.
Absolutely. The organization actually started in the skies over Vietnam, flying combat over the Red River Valley, which is the river that goes from China down through Hanoi and Haiphong and out to the Gulf of Tonkin. Anyone that flew north of there into what was termed the Route Pack 6 could become a member of the Red River Valley Association, the River Rats. Today, any U.S. aviator can be a member, and we also have associate members that support us as well. The organization right today, their principal mission is to provide grants and scholarships somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 a year to the children of aviators who have lost their lives. And so we are working on that on a day-to-day basis, because whether they die in combat or during training, the families of the aviators need to be remembered and cared for.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pig's Barbecue, serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. And Palmetto State Armory, American made for life. And Franklin Equipment, rent, buy, rely. And Atkins Law Firm Workers' Comp Attorneys, who you hire matters.